Alleluia. 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 Your word, O Lord, is truth. Consecrate us in the truth. Alleluia. Alleluia. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Lifting up his eyes to heaven, Jesus prayed, saying, Holy Father, keep them in your name that you have given me, so that they may be one, just as we are one. When I was with them, I protected them in your name that you gave me, and I guarded them, and none of them was lost except the son of destruction, in order that the scripture might be fulfilled. But now I am coming to you. I speak this in the world so that they may share my joy completely. I gave them your word, and the world hated them, because they do not belong to the world, any more than I belong to the world. I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one. They do not belong to the world any more than I belong to the world. Consecrate them in the truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, so I sent them into the world. And I consecrate myself for them, so that they also may be consecrated in truth. The Gospel of the Lord. Today we hear from chapter 17, the Gospel of John. And this is as Jesus was having the Last Supper and gave an extended sermon to the disciples there at the Last Supper. He also had a series of prayers and rituals, right, that he did with them. Something that is often overlooked by many readers of the Bible is that at the Last Supper, it wasn't just Jesus giving his teachings and giving an example. It was him instituting the priesthood. So he instituted the covenant Passover, right? The new covenant Passover sacrifice. Right? He did that at the Last Supper. But also when he washed the feet of the disciples, he was going through the process of ordination. Many scripture scholars have pointed this out, that in the book of Leviticus, when it described the Old Testament ordination, the first thing that would happen is the person had to be bathed in water before they would go in for the rest of the ordination rite. And so indeed, when Jesus was washing the disciples' feet, he was initiating that process of ordination. St. Peter understood this not at first, but after Jesus explained, when Peter refused to have his feet washed, Jesus responded by saying, if I do not do this, you will not have any part in me. Right? It's the Greek word for an inheritance. Because in the Old Testament, all the tribes of Israel, they all inherited different pieces of land in the Holy Land, except for the Levites, because the Levites were priests. And so it was considered that the Lord was their inheritance, right? Not any particular piece of land. After Jesus said that, Peter understood it, because then he said, well, wash me from head to toe, right? That's what would have happened in the Old Testament ordination ritual. You would have been bathed your whole body, right? So that was the initiation of the ordination rite. And then, of course, culminating in chapter 17, which we heard from today, where Jesus prays what scholars call the high priestly prayer, right, over them. It's the longest and most extended prayer in all of the Gospels. And Jesus says, consecrate them in the truth. To consecrate means to set apart, to make holy. Again, is the word used in the Old Testament to describe the ordination of priests. So he was ordaining these disciples. And then he sent them into the world. Now, as Catholics, we believe in the hierarchical priesthood, but we also believe in the common priesthood of all believers. That anyone who is baptized goes through a sort of ordination. Everyone who is baptized into Jesus, who was a priest, prophet, and a king. And so we also, just by virtue of our baptism, we are also sent as the disciples were sent. Now, what does it mean exactly to be a priest? When the church uses those words, what does it mean to be a priest? It means that you offer your life in sacrifice to God. Every time we have Mass, we should have a Mass intention that we're praying for every time we have Mass. We're offering up the Mass for a certain intention. It's a wise practice whenever you pray, like when you pray rosaries or spend time in front of the Blessed Sacrament, that you have an intention. You're offering up that time of prayer for a certain intention. That's a very priestly thing to do. But priests are also to be sacrificial. That's one of the reasons why priests wear all black in the midst of the world. It's to signify that we have died to the world and are living for Christ. We have sacrificed our plans for the sake of God's plans. And all believers who have been baptized into the common priesthood of Jesus should be living in the same way. The Jews used to say that the whole earth was like our altar, where our lives are able to be sacrificed to God. All of us are supposed to be priests. So think about that in your own life, right? What are some more ways that you can be more regularly practicing this common priesthood? What are the ways that you can offer your life in service and sacrifice to God? By means of your prayers, by means of your penances, and by means of your actions. If an innocent bystander were to observe your life, right, would they see you as somebody set apart? Somebody who has sacrificed your own plans for the sake of God's plans? Just as Jesus sent the disciples into the world, so now he sends us.